welcome to the Vicar's Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of a Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode we're talking about romance and all its complications. We're also talking about singleness and the importance of setting boundaries. It's so lovely to see you too. It feels like it's been ages since we've last recorded, hasn't it?
So true.
Yeah, we've had a nice little break.
Yeah.
Feeling a bit refreshed.
That's good. Yeah. And so we're on to series 2 of The Vicar of Dibley.
Goodness.
Yes, and the canny listener will notice that we haven't done one of the episodes in between seasons. We haven't done the Christmas lunch incident. That's because we thought we'd save that for Christmas.
For actual Christmas, as opposed to July.
Although, are any of you thinking about Christmas already? I've got people that are already asking me about Christmas plans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We've got harvest first.
Harvest first.
We've got to negotiate who gets to do harvest when we're 5 churches.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But I am designing a Christmas card to be sold for my churches.
Oh, you'll say, because
cool.
You've got your creative flow. That's exciting.
Creative juices.
Well, this week then, sometimes we always think about how are you and what you've been up to, but we're going to start to introduce our time together a little bit differently and think about something that we have loved in the week that we can share with you, our lovely listeners. So, Kate and Ruthie, what have you loved in the last week or so? Is there anything that's brimming in your mind to share? What's been lovely?
Well, it's been a while since we've all met, so actually there's been lots of lovely things that have happened. So I had a family wedding, which was great. I've had my mum and dad over for a bit who have helped look after Benjamin for various different things. But something really lovely, I've just had a really great meeting with a chap who's doing some really interesting things with young people and church and has got a load of funding for it. And I've come away from that meeting and thought, good, God is good, and there are excellent things going on. That's made me really happy. What about you, Kate?
So I've had a few things which I'm really loving at the moment. First and foremost, I'm finally getting a dog. Her name is Millie. I'm adopting her from Dogs Trust. She's between 5 and 7 years old. We're not exactly sure. And she's a Pomeranian poodle mix. And she loves to sing. Her favourite things are squeaky toys. And if you squeak a toy, she'll just sing along with it. I've sent a video to our chat. And no doubt once she's home, she'll make appearances on the podcast. So that's one thing, really loving. I'm bringing her home the day after we're recording this. And another thing, I've really been enjoying season 4 of Stranger Things. Watched volume 2. It's heartbreaking. Won't give any spoilers, but loved it.
Are you listening to Kate Bush constantly as well?
Yes.
With the rest of the world who are watching Stranger Things? I've not even watched Stranger Things.
I'm too scared to watch Stranger Things. I tried to watch the advert and I was like, I don't think I can. I'm too much of a big fat wuss.
Watch it with someone. It is legitimately good. I mean, maybe because there's a Dungeons and Dragons element for it for me, and it's kind of this 80s nostalgia.
I might try and get into it. If you recommend it, then I'll try and make a nice hot chocolate, get in my PJs, put my fairy lights on so I feel safe, and then I'll give it a go.
But then again, if horror's not your thing, then it's not your thing.
True.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway,
what about you, Jenny?
Well, for me, I have to say, I've just come back from a week in Cornwall, so I have absolutely loved just playing in the sea every day. We even went in when it was raining, because we were like, gotta make the most of the sea while we're here. And it was just so lovely to be with friends and just have a bit of a break. Splashing around was great. I kept on going under the waves this year. I finally learned how to swim in the sea and not let the salt pierce my eyes and just grow up a bit. Not grow up a bit, but like get used to it a bit more. So I was really brave. I was doing dives. I was bobbing along. Usually I just stay at the shore and get absolutely thrashed by the waves. But I went a little bit deeper, safe, but a little bit deeper this week. And just had so much fun. Many pasties as well. And many, many coffees. So that was lovely. But this morning, something really special happened. One of my parishioners shared with me a miracle that happened to him and a massive answer to prayer. So the loveliest thing I can think of today, the thing that's really made my day, is hearing his story of, just God healing him and encouraging him in a really random but really beautiful way. So yeah, lots of lovely things for me this week.
Oh, that's great.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, super cool.
Talking of things which we've loved this week, I have also had something which was a little bit more painful, but maybe there's schadenfreude in it. This week, I'm a vicar, and I've lived the rural vicar's nightmare. I went to the wrong church when I was guest preaching somewhere.
Oh, no.
I did not realise that there were 2 villages of the same name within 20-minute range.
That is a troll.
So I really confidently, Sunday morning, I was guest preaching at someone who'd just been ordained priest. It was their first communion. She asked me to preach for her. Confidently went off to what I thought was my destination. Arrived there, no one else was there. I'm completely out of mobile phone signal area. No mobile internet. My sat nav, I use Google Maps, wasn't really working. So I was like, I'm obviously in the wrong Michael Church. Is there another Michael Church? And I just had to drive with into the unknown, vaguely certain that this could be where I was meant to be going. It was 10 minutes to 11, which is when the service started. It was a 30-minute drive to my potential correct destination. I bombed it. And you know what? I think I made it in time and actually did a fairly good sermon. I've had a message. Loads of people have said that's one of the best sermons I've ever heard. So,
wow! Maybe all of the adrenaline, just like the Holy Spirit adrenaline, just flooded you.
Yes.
That's so funny, especially because if she was a newbie vicar as well, she must have been thinking, oh my gosh,
oh my goodness, I know, and I arrived just as we were about to start the gospel.
Oh, well done.
Oh, that's
well
relief
done.
then. That's all right. Oh gosh, I think that's everyone's worst nightmare in lots of ways. Only probably eclipsed by someone objecting at a wedding. I think that would be worse.
I'm not looking forward to that day.
And speaking of weddings,
Woo!
This episode we are doing is called Engagement.
Sorry, I'm really hyped for this.
I am too, because I genuinely think this is my favourite episode of The Vicar of Dibley. And I think it's if I just fancy watching an episode, I think this is normally my go-to one.
You big romantic, you.
I think that must be it. And Kate pointed out, I hadn't thought of it, but now that she's mentioned it, I think that's completely true. There's a really heavy Jane Austen influence in all of this episode, and I adore Jane Austen. I have 6 books tattooed on me which represent the 6 finished novels of Jane Austen, and there's so much influence in it. There are lots of the classic tropes from Jane Austen of not being sure if someone fancies you, intervening people, terrible misunderstandings, difficult parents, and the language in this episode has a very Jane Austen influence. So I'm super excited to go through this episode. Yes. And I'm glad Jenny's hyped as well. Kate, get on our level.
Yes, I'm hyped. I mean, I'll mention this later about I love the episode, but there are some parts of it I just felt didn't live up to what I wanted them to be. But we'll get to that.
We'll fight you about it later.
Yeah.
So let's crack on with this episode. So we begin, as we often do, in a parish council meeting. They are discussing the village play, and they've just had a rendition of Hamlet starring Frank.
Yes.
Would you go? Also,
Absolutely.
okay. Yeah.
Absolutely, I would go.
Yeah, I mean, we have community theatre, I guess you would call it, or local theatre. One of my churches has it as kind of a regular fundraising event. There's a company called Rain or Shine Theatre Company. Haven't managed to get to one yet. I was meant to go to one a couple of weeks ago, but I was surprise dog sitting for Ruthie, and there was a thunderstorm.
Oh,
My dog hates thunderstorms and so got completely freaked out and was hiding. So I stopped Kate going to the theatre. Well, technically my dog did. But yeah, sorry about that. We'll have to sort you out with a theatre trip another time.
There's definitely something about going as the representative of a community and just supporting stuff, even if you have to have a good stiff drink afterwards.
I love Geraldine in this because she's so enthusiastic about it, and some of the compliments are a bit backhanded, but clearly everyone else thought it was terrible. But there's something in the role of the clergy person, isn't there, about being enthusiastic when people have tried.
definitely. I always feel like so proud because when was it? About a year ago, probably, maybe slightly less. A few of my professions, a number of them, were performing in. I think there was 2 of them were performing in a play. We have our drama group is Under the Tower drama, so there's a little bit of a cheeky church link. But the play was scary. And so me being a terrible softie, every time there was a jump, I was literally, because I was on the first row, they were like, oh, the vicar, we shall seat her here. I felt very privileged. But I was going, oh! And I was jumping literally out of my seat and going, oh! Like, so much throughout the play that since they've sort of let me know when the plays are, but they've never like formally invited me back. I think it's because I was too disruptive. But I feel so proud. Like when someone's on the stage that's also part of the congregation or that I know well, I'm like, yeah, this is so cool. Like a great reason for a night out, really. I feel so proud seeing them up there. So I bet Geraldine, I wonder if she felt like that as well.
Have you two ever trod the boards before?
I have.
A little.
I only ever get cast as chorus members. I did amateur dramatics when I was growing up in my local town. My sister always got like the Disney princess. We did Aladdin and she was like a beautiful princess. And I was like one of the little jewel chorus girls that used to come on and like flail my arms to music. But I did, yeah, I loved it. I do love all that sort of stuff, but memorising lines terrifies me.
Yeah. Well, I peaked in primary school. I was cast as Mary in Mary Jones and Her Bible, which is a musical about a girl called Mary Jones who's Welsh, walking to go and get a Welsh language Bible, and there's a musical. Yes, and I was cast as Mary Jones. And then I was, we did a version of Joseph and His Technicolor Dreamcoat in year 6, and I was meant to be Pharaoh, but then the headmaster came in and decided he wanted to be Pharaoh. So I was then Reuben.
I was Benjamin in Joseph and His Technicolor Dreamcoat at secondary school, because I was the smallest of the brothers cast. There we go.
Oh, there we go. After that, I went backstage, and in sixth form, I was stage manager for the drama department.
Very good.
So there we go.
I would, if I hadn't had the call for ordination, I would have gone and studied drama and English.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was the plan. That's what I was looking at university.
Oh, real? Yeah, I studied GCSE and A level and absolutely loved it, but definitely wasn't gifted. But I bet you'd have been amazing, Ruthie.
I love Shakespeare as well. So doing Hamlet, I prefer the comedies because they're just great to play and they've got some of the most fun characters. But yeah, doing a bit of Hamlet would be.
No.
Yeah, I'd probably be over enthusiastic, and everyone would probably kind of slightly be laughing at me.
I had my really humbling moment, unfortunately, was so I did performing arts for an AS level, so it's a first year of sixth form, and I got taken aside and they said, "We really think you'd get a higher grade if you did stage management rather than performance." So I mean, fair play, but I was suitably humbled.
Wow, there we go. So Geraldine is cheering on Frank and bravoing, and everyone else is silent. So we move on to the topic of the newsletter. Do your two churches have a newsletter, a round robin that goes out quarterly or monthly or whatever it might be?
We have a newsletter that comes out every month, and I literally just write one of the wonderful women in my church family, she organises all the information, she puts it all together. I simply add in dates and like a couple of lines. But then there's a separate kind of community magazine that I write an article for every month. In fact, I have deadlines coming up soon. I need to get that done. So yeah, that's kind of I don't have to make up adverts though, unlike Geraldine in this episode. But yeah, it's big here. I bet it is for you, Caitlin, with the whole rural life, is it?
Yeah. So we have not a parish newsletter, but a community magazine, which covers my group and then some of the villages, kind of in some of the other some of the other benefices, some of the other groups of parishes near me. It's called Tracking the News, and I write like you, Jenny, I write a little foreword for each month, and I'll also say, please can you put in an article about X, Y or Z, but I don't really run it, which is nice because I have a really strong memory of, we did a rural placement when we were training, and the vicar I was staying with was, we went to their parish magazine meeting, and it was a really traumatic meeting because the people who were running it were really laying into the vicar about not using her free time to get the newsletter done and to work on the newsletter. So I feel really thankful that all I do is make sure I've written my piece by the 15th of every month.
It is a very classic vicar church thing, isn't it, doing a newsletter? I do one in my role, but it's an email that gets sent to people, and I hope they read it because I spend quite a lot of time on it. But other than that, try and do different things to make it engaging. And it kind of serves for the B plot, doesn't it, throughout this whole episode, trying to find articles for this newsletter, which I'm going to say that's, for me, the weakness in this episode. I feel like the B plot just didn't reach its full potential, it's really secondary to the A plot, which obviously the A plot of Hugo and Alice is really important and it's a strong one, but compared to some other episodes, normally that B plot comes and at the end you get this fantastic little twist, or everything comes together, and I just feel like it lacked that punch this time. I'm gonna argue against that for the many different ones that come out, especially one later, and I'll come. Okay. Well, when we come to that one, I will say it's redeemed by one of them.
Oh, a battle is brewing, my listeners. A battle is brewing.
So we move on from the meeting where we've not got many items for the newsletter, so they come thick and fast throughout the rest of the episode, and we're in Geraldine's living room, and bless her, she is typing away at her typewriter trying to do this newsletter when Alice comes in and says, Geraldine says to her, "Hello Alice, come in and shut up." So Alice sits down on the sofa, and while Geraldine is writing her newsletter, Alice asks the important question if Geraldine will be telling everyone when Jesus is coming, because she'd mentioned it in the previous newsletter, and her mum wants to get the house ready. And I love this bit. It's one of my favourite bits from the whole series. And saying, he'll just turn up. Well, that's a bit rude. What if I'm on the toilet?
It won't feel like that. It'll just feel lovely.
And I love that bit so much. I just think it's really lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be an amazing piece for the article, or for your article or for your newsletter, wouldn't you? Jesus is definitely coming back. This date, this time, get ready. But he doesn't.
Yeah. No, and so many people have tried to predict it. So the final book of the Bible is a book called Revelation, and people have mined through it, trying to find out dates and times and trying to work out the exact date and time that Jesus is coming. And there's been loads of ones like that, especially in the States. And there was the thing with the Mayan calendar as well, that they thought the world would end in 2012. And here we are 10 years later. And there's just no point because we don't know.
Yeah, and
Jesus will turn up.
In scripture, it says don't try and work it out as well. Like no one knows the hour, but just be ready all the time, baby.
Exactly, that's the whole point. Time and place unknown. We've got to be like the bridesmaids, waiting for the groom, not knowing when he's going to turn up.
What a topical parable.
I know.
So we don't know when Jesus
No,
is
we
coming,
don't.
and we'd like to declare that afresh in this podcast as well. We just don't know.
Yeah.
One day, though.
But when he
But
comes, it
maybe-
will be lovely and nice.
yeah, exactly.
And perhaps if you listen to this episode backwards, perhaps there is a subliminal message which will tell us
Listen to
the
every
exact
fifth
date
word.
is.
Yeah.
So if you listen to that backwards, it will give you the exact time and day. Jesus, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on.
And then, beyond trying to calculate when Jesus will be arriving from a newsletter, you also have Geraldine trying to seek out some gossip, which I don't know about you, but I definitely have people who look to me to be like the person who brings them the gossip.
No.
Like there's this lady I visit once a month, and she's always asking me what the gossip is, and I don't have any gossip. I don't have any gossip.
Do you not? I think we are in the privileged position sometimes of hearing some of the gossip.
Well, yeah, not gossip I'd want to share.
Yeah, exactly. that's the problem, and so we are often people in the know. Well, sometimes we're the last ones to know about things, and then it smacks us in the face. And it is one of the challenges of being clergy is actually you know the secrets before they come out, which can be such a burden at times. You know, if there's something big that's coming out that's a scandal and actually it has to go through different factors. I've been in a church where this has happened, and it was such a weight for the kind of the staff team and particularly the vicar to have that and know for months before they can say anything. Yeah, but I don't think that's the kind of gossip Geraldine's after.
No.
She wants little tidbits.
She almost gets a little tasty tidbit for someone kissing someone who's not his wife. But it's his mum.
Yeah, she's a bit like she's trying to be like Lady Whistledown if you've watched Bridgerton.
Yeah.
She's finding out the gossip and naming people. But I love that she Alice says, "Don't tell anyone," and she crosses her heart and grabs her notebook to write down the details.
I was going to say, like, you wouldn't publish that sort of gossip in a parish newsletter, but then I'm suddenly reminded of one of the newer episodes of Jonathan Creek. Like, this is an obscure clergy on TV reference. For those of you who don't know, Jonathan Creek is a BBC detective drama about a guy who in the early seasons designs magic tricks, and he solves impossible mysteries using his knowledge of magic and all of that. In the later seasons, he's moved to a village with his wife, and in this particular episode that's come to mind, there is a vicar involved, a vicarage, and they have a new baby, and loads of private information from the vicar's life and like gossip which only the vicar would know is turning up in a parish newsletter or the parish magazine, and it turns out that someone has been hacking into the baby monitor to put the secrets.
Can you do that?
That's
Is that possible to
creepy.
do?
I don't
For
know.
normal people?
Some of them that are connected to Wi-Fi and stuff like that. My one is just not advanced enough to do
I guess
that kind
if
of thing.
it's on a radio frequency,
Yeah.
Wow.
you might be able
Okay.
to tune in. But yeah, there we go. That was a very obscure reference, whether or not we keep that in.
So we're having a very silly conversation, and then Alice suddenly gets quite serious and asks if she's unlovable and will never know human love and emotion. And I think I speak for all of us potentially that we've all been through this stage, and I think it's something we've touched on previously in episodes, but especially as female clergy, you are made to feel that you will always be single and alone if you go through this through this life. And you know, for some people that is their well, not choice, but maybe what they're called to do or how they end up. And actually, who's to say that having a spouse makes a life fulfilling?
Oh gosh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's a theme in this. As much as this episode is about engagement and a couple coming together, actually I think one of the stronger themes is singleness in different forms and different experiences of singleness. So we have Alice, who I think she reveals in this episode that she's 25 or near enough, because that's how long she's known Hugo, and she's feeling like she'll never know love and that her relationship with Hugo will never actually happen. You have Hugo, who is also single and who, as Geraldine later describes, they are Mr. and Mrs. Cactus.
Yeah.
But then you also have Geraldine herself and Owen, which we'll come to later. And maybe even Frank, although we don't explore that very much.
Yeah. It's explored more fully, isn't it? I think in this season, in later episodes, about Geraldine's singleness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, they talk about her being on the shelf and getting older and uglier. Or that might be in
this episode.
The wedding
Creeps in a little bit this episode with because there's a couple of proposals in this episode.
Which we'll get to. We'll get to.
We will.
Absolutely.
We'll get to those particular
Hold me down.
comments.
Hold me back.
But yeah, poor Alice. I think being in your mid-20s and being single, and if you've never actually been in a relationship before, like Alice, you can really feel her pain and her self-doubt. And with it being, obviously she's in a village and it's an incredibly tiny dating pool. Really, Hugo is the only person sort of in her age range that we see. And I think maybe we see the similarities with that with being in the church, because the dating pool is quite small in the church. And as you said, as female clergy, that also really limits and restricts the number of people who might want to date you.
And her age in this as well hits back, I think, at that Jane Austen line as well, that if you're 25, you're on the shelf and a spinster, which, you know, is... Bachelor's always cool, but spinster is like haggard old woman, isn't it? But poor Alice feels like this. So Geraldine steps in and says, it's obvious that you love Hugo. How long have you fancied him? It's years and years and years.
25 years.
Oh, yeah. She's like, sometimes these things just take a little bit of time. How long have you known him? 25 years. Oh. But then she gets a very good idea. Well, in her eyes is a good idea, but in my eyes is absolutely terrifying and extremely inappropriate.
Really?
Yeah.
Because when I was watching this scene, I thought of you, Jenny, because this whole scene reminds me very much of my courtship at theological college.
I am guilty.
And Jenny, you were the Geraldine to my Alice in this situation, and just orchestrated things in order that my spouse would ask me out on a date. So I don't think you can claim this as a terrible idea, because you did this.
To be fair, actually, I knew that both you and your spouse, who wasn't your spouse at the time, had feelings for each other, which was glorious, because I just got to rise above it all going, Mwahaha! And I guess with Geraldine, she's doing the same, because she's pretty sure that Hugo adores Alice. She knows that Alice absolutely adores Hugo, so she's probably thinking, oh, this is definitely going to work. But if I had that same situation and was a vicar, if I could be guaranteed that both parties were interested in each other in that way, then I'd definitely do a little bit of, I don't know, I'd likely do a little bit of something if I knew them. But if I didn't, then I think it's way too risky and terrifying. But I would always celebrate it if they came to me and said, ooh, this is happening.
It's exceptionally difficult as a vicar. I think, obviously, in the Vicar of Dibley, we see there is a blurring of boundaries. Between Alice and Geraldine, and sort of what relationship they have. Are they more like sisters or almost parent-daughter, friends at other points? Whereas if you're actually in a more real-life setting where actually you are the vicar, it unfortunately reminds me of, oh my goodness, on Netflix I was watching a documentary about the LFDS, the
fundamentalist last day people.
And about how marriages were arranged kind of in that context of prophet would just say, you're marrying that person and this is God's will. And so in an extreme, if a priest is saying you two should get together, that could be spiritual abuse.
Yeah, it's
in an extreme, but that's not what's happening here.
No. Although Geraldine's conversation then to Hugo down the phone is massively inappropriate when she says, "Pop over at this time, and for God's sake, please try to look sexually attractive."
Which, to be fair, he absolutely crushes.
Absolutely nails. Because...
And the way he understands it is so incredibly fun. Like,
Yeah.
thinking that this is a League of Gentlemen situation.
Oh, how
Yes, so
exciting.
that's what happens next, is that the phone call happens, and then the door, we cut to the door opening a little bit later on, and Hugo turns up in his bon pantalon, which are like lemon yellow and have tiny golf courses on them, and I couldn't quite see what was on his yellow tie, but that's his...
yeah.
Do you know what it was?
No, it's not the one. It's not Tara Salata, is it?
No, it's a
it's
yellow
not.
tie that's got lots of things on it.
Oh, is it?
And
Okay.
this
He's got
is
Tara Salata on
Hugo's...
another tie, I think, isn't he, on another episode.
Yeah, he does. This is his interpretation of sexy, and good for Hugo.
Yeah,
Hugo.
lemon pantaloons.
And you know what? I need to, just as an aside about Hugo, they've really played up his fun and his naivety in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, if we go right back to that opening meeting, and he's just got the most innocent expressions and enthusiasm on his face, and that's continued, you know, throughout this episode, which is just so sweet.
Yeah.
But he's also, although he is sweet and naive, he's got a big problem on his hands. And that problem is, of course, he's going to lose the adoration of Alice, because she's tipping into this unloved place of doom.
Yeah.
So here's a chance
And so
to turn things
Geraldine...
around, which is glorious.
Yeah, Geraldine says to him, "Next time you see Alice, give her a big kiss." And the door knocks. Oh, I wonder who that could be.
It's
Yes.
so good.
And then Geraldine starts maybe preemptively celebrating and patting her own back for her prowess as a matchmaker. And then you just get that fantastic moment when she comes in. They're still stood away awkwardly from each other, and she just yells at them to start kissing. What's the actual
Oh, for
name?
heaven's sake,
For heaven's
just kiss,
sake,
you
just
morons.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. Did I say that out loud?
but Alice is looking gorgeous as well in that scene, I have to say.
Oh,
That
it's
dress
quite the
is a
dress,
very
isn't it?
flattering
Yeah.
dress.
Yeah, I love that bit where she's in the kitchen celebrating. And I happened to notice at that point that she has a rather full wine rack, and it looks like a good selection of wines at that point. And so Geraldine coaches them on kissing, which we see as totally ridiculous, don't we? But I think in some bits of the church, people have no idea how to do romance and intimacy. And the kind of teaching that we give on sex and relationships, I can see why they would just stand far apart and go, I'm not quite sure what to do. Especially if we come from kind of traditions where it's, you know, no sex before marriage and
No hugs before marriage.
no hugs,
No handy
no
hold.
form of intimacy in any way, shape or form before marriage. Actually, the first kiss is very terrifying.
It's a big deal. And also it's something that Alice has wanted for so long that actually when you think, oh my goodness, this is the moment I've been waiting for, and probably Hugo as well, you just think, oh, I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's church teaching, or is it more the kind of Jane Austen vibes that we're getting for this episode and the fact that they're two very sheltered people? I mean, you look at Hugo being brought up by David. I very much doubt that David has been coaching Hugo in terms of
Giving him the sex talk.
giving it,
Yeah, 'cause-
or like Alice is very sheltered, and I don't get the impression that St Barnabas is a sort of church that has really pushed the purity culture.
No.
No. I don't
No,
think. I
definitely
think in
not
most
Geraldine.
Anglican churches, now I could be wrong, but we don't talk about things like this from the front at all.
No.
And I'm
I was
not a
just
big fan
thinking
of
about
that
it.
actually.
No.
No.
I agree. And I was thinking about it in relationship to today and how we do ministry and things like that. So I do quite a lot of youth work as part of my role. And one of the things I insist on doing our sessions on sex and relationships and gender and sexuality and that kind of thing. Not because I'm just a big old perv who wants to talk about that stuff, but because I think it's really important to talk about and building up that trust and relationship with, especially with young people, but with the congregation as a whole, to talk about that kind of thing, because the way that society will have taught them about how sex works is not how sex works, or relationships, and it's only talked about in one way, isn't it? That, you know, you meet another person and you get down to business and that kind of thing. Whereas actually there are so many different ways of sexual expression, and we don't talk about that. And we assume that the old people aren't doing it, but they absolutely are.
And then by not talking about that in a church context, it creates this idea in your mind that it's all just completely wrong and taboo, and therefore anything you're feeling is shameful.
Yeah, just terrible.
Yeah.
I think we've got a long way to go with this, haven't we?
Yes, I think we do need to move on.
But they manage, through the guidance of Geraldine, of you're going to do this and you're going to love it.
And they do.
Lovely.
They last for hours.
Do. They go on for hours and hours.
Yeah. And Alice is the one who takes the initiative, actually. She's the one who goes in for the kiss. And throughout this episode, she's the initiator.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it, Alice. Yes. And so Geraldine is being awkward around them, and then says, "Oh, I'll just get on with some work," as they're still smooching in the background, and then goes, "Actually, no, I'm going to go out. I think that's probably for the best. I'll just leave you here." And the next thing we see her outside with their car, clearly just gone and done a shop, and Owen pops by at the time, and Geraldine asks for help, and Owen's like, "What's in it for me?" And chocolate hobnob, let's do it. Which a chocolate hobnob will enthuse me in lots of different ways
definitely.
as well.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Which for again, our listeners perhaps outside of the UK, a chocolate hobnob is a top tier biscuit or cookie, as I suppose you'd call it in the US.
Absolutely, yeah, it's up there with the big ones. But yeah, and then another one of my favourite moments of Vicar of Dibley happens, where Owen comes into the house of the shopping and asks where to put it, and Geraldine says, "Oh, just bung it in the kitchen," and he literally launches it into the kitchen. And you hear the smash, and you see Geraldine's face just resigned to the fact that she's about to clear things up. And as they enter in, it's clear that Hugo and Alice are still necking.
Well, actually, so I was going to say, actually, there's some incredibly clever camera work here, because it's not made, although it's obvious to the audience, it's not actually obvious, because they don't show us until there's a sudden pan to include Alice and Hugo.
That's true. Yeah.
And and Geraldine saying how awkward it made her confirmation class.
I know. Can you imagine? I think you move location of the confirmation class at that point. Just
move it to the church
or something, or have it outside if it's sunny.
Or it's a vicarage. She's bound to have other rooms, even though we don't see them.
We don't see any other rooms. Yeah.
Yes.
And then they come up for air and they can't speak. Because there's been so much snogging, and the vicar, Geraldine, says, "Do you want a brew or anything like that?" And Alice says, "No, I found more wonderful things. Come along, big boy." And off they disappear out of the house.
Yeah, which then leaves us open. It opens up further conversations about singleness. You know, now Alice and Hugo have paired off. You then have Owen kind of lamenting that he's never had a proper kiss, which I think really he's trying it on, you know, a bit in this episode.
I didn't get that.
Well, no, because he talks about how he had kissed Daisy or whatever her name is. So maybe he's not had like a full-on kiss like Alice and Hugo have, but you know. But anyway, he talks about not having had a kiss like that. And in one of the worst judgment calls I have ever seen
Makes me so angry.
in the whole of this series, Geraldine kisses him.
I know!
I think it's because of that little poem he says. I might fall for that.
I looked that up because I was curious about it, and it's song lyrics by Buddy Holly.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
really?
Yeah.
That's so moving.
It's raining in my heart.
Oh.
No, like, even then.
Yeah, I know what you
even
mean.
then.
What
like,
did she say?
what
Come on
does
then,
Geraldine...
give us a snog.
Something
Well,
like
go
that.
Go on then, or something.
Yeah.
Go on. Oh, God.
But, like, what does she think is going to happen? Where this guy who is saying he is lonely, she's going to let him be her, you know, she's going to let him kiss her, and she'll potentially be his first proper kiss, or whatever. Of course he's going to then start assuming that there's more there.
Yeah.
Sex, money, and power, aren't they? They're the big downfalls of people in positions of power, and especially with it seems in the church we're very guilty of that, and there are numerous cases that come up, and we see in the news about how, you know, affairs and other things that have happened because people are frustrated. It's a difficult job. It's a hard one at the end of the day. And so sneaky Satan gets in and, you know, uses things like this. And it's just such a bad call on her part.
It is, but then it's even like, you can't even see, like, she never actually wanted to kiss him. So it's not even like she was attracted to him and she was making a bad judgment call about starting a relationship with someone who's vulnerable. She just leans into, like, we know that in her past she's been quite forward in her relationships. You know, she makes it really clear that she's fairly casual about snogging and sticking
having
men's
hands
hands
down
down her
bras.
jumper.
Yeah.
But to then allow that into your ministry life, where this is a problem where with boundaries, where now we get taught you really need to have your boundaries because people will project onto you, and even if you do nothing except you're kind to someone who's lonely, someone who's hurt, will start to read romantic.
Yeah. And this becomes a big thing later on, doesn't it, with when Simon appears on the scene, and boundaries becomes another big thing there. But Geraldine,
just like
it's
for
terrible.
Worst judgment call.
For comedic effect, though, it is fab, and obviously, we have to take everything with a pinch of salt, and a less of a kind of what we would do in real life with these kinds of extreme activities. Because for me, like, I don't remember seeing it for the first time, but I can imagine the first time I was absolutely, like, say, shocked out of my face. But then what's worse is after the kiss. Yeah. And, like, a bit of pork swallowed out there, and a filling's gone missing there. And I just thought, that doesn't sound like a kiss, it just sounds like a big suck. It doesn't sound great at all.
It's interesting, because
I don't know.
On a positive side, you know, Geraldine is being true to who she is, and, like, showing that she's still the person she was before she was ordained, before she became a vicar. And we talk about that. We've talked about that, how, you know, being genuine and still being you is important and something to be celebrated. But there are limits.
But don't snog your parishioners.
You cannot.
Appropriate behaviour.
And I think this is, she's trying to be a friend. It's like, you know, when your friend hasn't had their first kiss yet and they can have practice with you. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
No, you revealed something there, Jenny.
Not
happened
in the parish.
Not in the parish, though.
And not as adults.
Ideally not older than 17 years old.
And
ideally,
I don't think you do that as adults.
No.
Anyway. We
have a big
continue just being in shock and horror. But
let's go to the
Owen leaves, and then we get
nice relationship.
Yeah.
A montage.
Oh. Is this the Valentine's Day? It's My Funny Valentine's mashup. Is that this?
Yes, it's a My Funny Valentine.
Each day like Valentine's Day.
Oh, and we just see Alice and Hugo snogging in lots of different places. Running
around trees.
Wandering off.
Golden lighting.
Yeah.
Showing very little self-control.
Yeah.
It's interesting that what we don't see is them going on dates. Like, there's a huge... It's an interesting view of their relationship. And part of me wonders, again, it's that kind of Jane Austen-y courtship. And part of me almost wonders whether the whole Jane Austen vibes are actually, we're seeing this through Alice's eyes.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing her great romantic moment where, if you're someone who has been single for a long time and been wondering about when's it's going to happen, what forms your impression of what romance is the books you've read, the movies you've watched.
Yeah.
Potentially the stories your friends have told you. So it's almost like we are seeing this through Alice's eyes. I'm assuming they are actually spending time with each other where they're not kissing, and they've known each other all their lives, so they have
and
together.
it like reflects that excitement, doesn't it? Of like finding your first love or going on dates with the person that you've got a big crush on, and all, and like how you sort of flop slightly into an obsession just for a little bit and just want to spend every waking minute with them, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to say blah blah blah. So I'm really like this, whatever the word is, really phased away from that. But I'm not at all. But which is very sweet. But then what's the troll in this episode? Although maybe the thing that leads us to a mighty revelation is that from this golden, beautiful sequence, we come to the harsh reality of everyone else's judgments. When I say everyone else, I mean just one man.
Ugh,
David Blooming Horton. Come to ruin our day.
After this lovely sequence, we go to Horton Manor and David Horton's there, and Hugo goes to tell his dad that he's got a girlfriend, and David's reaction is, thank goodness you've got away from that Alice woman. And he just... Well,
he doesn't even call her a woman, he calls her a thing.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Or creature.
So saddies.
He's awful.
And that Alice creature, doesn't he?
Yeah, he calls her a creature. I don't sympathise with David here, but I can understand that he is from that kind of pedigree background where marriages are picked very carefully to ensure like that the next generation are going to live up to your privilege and whatever. So the concept of his son, who, let's face it, is not the brightest
bulb in the box
pencil, is going to further that genetic trait with someone who is also not the brightest pencil. The sharpest pencil. This is really difficult to say. You can see David's fears about how the family line will look, and his privilege, and potentially hang-ups from how his marriage was put together. Who knows? But he does not approve of Alice, and makes it clear. And poor Hugo, you see him struggling with the respect he has for his dad, and not wanting to disappoint his father, against the love he has for Alice. Which, we then see him very seriously considering his father's words, because he takes David's words seriously. He respects him. Although, for one positive thing that comes out of this conversation, which isn't intended, there's a really sweet thing which is revealed. So earlier, Alice has said that she's known and liked Hugo for 25 years. And David reveals that she has been chasing after him for 10 years. So this is really like, she was 15 when she really started falling in love with him. And started seeing him as her one, which is just, that's beautiful.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
And I love that Hugo isn't just swept away, and he really does give it some serious thought. And we get the shock factor at Horton Manor, but we get to unpack that a bit with him and Geraldine when he goes to see Geraldine about the situation. And it's lovely to see him like really think it through and talk about his love for Alice, but also his love for his dad. And
it's simultaneously really upsetting for those of us seeing it through Alice's eyes that Hugo seems to be backtracking. But if we kind of step back from the emotions of that moment, what we're seeing is actually it's making it clear that Hugo's love and respect for Alice is all the stronger because it's not just about being caught up in the heat of a moment.
Yeah.
He's actually really seriously considering the implications and potentially knowing that his dad doesn't like Alice, thinking about her and whether she would be happy marrying into that family.
So after chatting with Jerry, he decides that he's going to go off and think about all these big decisions, and he's going to have to stay away from Alice. And lo and behold, who appears at the door?
No, this bit is
Alice, and she sees Hugo and says, "Come here, Mr. Moist," which is the worst nickname ever.
What should have been a nice little time for them turns out to be one of the saddest times ever. And because Hugo's got a big decision to make, he has to awkwardly shuffle out and say just a plain old goodbye with no kiss at all. And then that little moment that Alice melts in, I feel like just as you were saying, we've all had those moments where we think, oh my goodness, am I totally unlovable? Will I ever find someone I can share my heart with? This is another all-human experience moment where you've been really into someone, having a great time, woo, having gone lots of dates, holding hands, maybe a few kisses, and all of a sudden everything comes crashing down. And what does she say? Oh no, he sucked out all my juice and discarded me like an empty Ribena carton, or something similar. So sweet, but so sad. And Geraldine, bless her, has to come up with quite a quick reason why.
Yeah, and I think that's true not just for romantic relationships as well, but if you invest really heavily in a friendship and then just it disappears and you just think, oh, my juice has been sucked. And not in a good way.
Which, actually then the reality is that, it's not that situation, but there's other stuff happening, and
and so Geraldine tells Alice a little white lie that Hugo sprained his tongue. She needs to stay away from that to help with that. And Alice is pacified for the moment and goes to make tea, and good grief, Owen appears at the door.
Yeah.
And luckily he's got Jerry's filling with him, which he's recently passed.
I think I might immediately vomit.
That's good. But then I guess this frames really the first reason why this episode is called Engagement. Yeah. Finally, Geraldine has a proposal.
She has a proposal, and it's my note is, did Owen take notes from Mr. Collins?
It's very Jane Austen.
It's very he does insult her a little bit. And it's not a flattering proposal.
No. He wants a woman, but he doesn't want to pay for it.
And you're not getting any younger yourself.
It's so horrible, isn't it?
I know.
And I
think it's just very real. Like I think Owen just says it exactly how it is. But when you're proposing, you're not really supposed to say it how it is. You just say everything with a rose lens on it, ideally.
He's very blunt, isn't he, Owen?
Blunt, yeah.
He just he's a farmer, and he calls it as it is.
Exactly.
And just deals with hard facts and thinks that's the way to woo a woman.
He does. He absolutely does. But
he's thought about it financially as well. He's got the solid investment of a...
the stamps. You think about the stamps?
Yeah, the stamp where he's found a stamp with the floor that he thinks he can get money for, and he's just drawn a moustache on the Queen.
Oh dear, it's so good. It's so good. Oh dear. But yeah, it's not to be for these two.
Yeah. And so Owen gives her some time to think about his lovely
Because women's
proposal.
brains are smaller, so they need more time. I hasten to it.
But he fully expects her to accept.
Yes.
Oh no.
And
My little love bucket.
and Alice has been in the kitchen this entire time.
But totally oblivious, it would seem.
And she
Because
comes
when
in,
she hears the news...
she's thrilled.
And she asks if Geraldine will conduct her own wedding, and she does a little skit, which let's talk about this.
Have you been asked it?
Do you know what? I became engaged last October. So how many months has it been? October, November, December, January, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've been engaged for about 10 months. And I kid you not, and I don't mind it for all my beloved parishioners who may or may not be listening, but every single person goes, "Are you going to do your own wedding?" And then I go, I go, yeah, because I actually wear white to the wedding. I wear my big white cassock. So I do this little skit where I'm like, I took myself at the vicar, and then I take off my stole and I'm the bride, and then I'm saying to the vicar, but no, it's impossible, and probably illegal.
It is illegal.
It just
in terms of church law,
it just
we can't do them, sadly.
It doesn't work.
No.
Because you can't proclaim yourself married.
Why? No.
And no, it just doesn't, and you wouldn't want to.
No.
Like, you want your wedding to be about, like, you and your partner. Like, you're making your vows to your partner. You do not want to have the stress of putting together a wedding sermon.
Yeah.
No.
Like, for your own wedding. Like, lead your own wedding. Like, it's just not, like, you wouldn't want to do that.
It'd be terrible. I'd get all the words wrong, so I'd be so... I'd probably just cry the whole time, and everyone just watch me crying. It would be terrible. Terrible.
Some clergy will do their own children's baptisms.
I did that.
Some will.
I can understand that, yeah.
My dad didn't do mine. He may have done one of my siblings or another. Some clergy will do their families' weddings, like maybe their children's weddings.
Yeah.
And some clergy will do family funerals.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'm seriously considering putting together a very thorough funeral plan for my own funeral.
I think that's a good idea.
Do your own, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially do my own. But other than that, the thing is, the emotions that you feel as a participant in the service, so whether you're a bride or groom or parent of a child that's being baptised or parent of someone who's getting married, or a family member who's grieving, it is incredibly difficult to separate out into then the clergy who's officiating, where you need to be the one who's holding it together.
Yeah, I definitely had that moment when I baptised my son. And it was really lovely, but now you've mentioned it, I was really aware that I was trying to do the service and organise the service, and so it came to the bit where I was about to put the water on his head, and I stopped myself and said, right, you're doing this bit, and it's it's you, it's God, it's your son, and this is a special moment. You just need to pause and think about it for a moment, because I was so caught up in all the trying to do everything else as part of it. But yeah, so the long and short of it is we can't do our own weddings.
No. For many reasons, mostly being you would want to, and it's like not legal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can I share a private source of joy with our listeners, which you can cut this out if you don't want it in, Ruth, but I was lucky enough, most privileged enough, for my very first wedding to be of two who I do see actually as family. Beloved Ruthie and Toby. When he said, doing their own family weddings, I was like, yeah, I've done that. And I was like, oh no, they're not technically obviously. But actually, my very first wedding was Ruthie and Toby. And I remember that being like, whoa, because I was like, I haven't got to do what I'm doing because it's my first one. But actually, I remember flopping right into priest mode the night before when I said a little prayer with you guys. We were just like, right, peace over everything that seems to be chaotic and potentially overwhelming and annoying. That can do one in the name of Jesus. And then I remember on the day getting ready with you and being like, friend mode. And then I remember you arriving to church in your car, Ruthie, me stepping out and being like, oh my goodness, here is the bride. And, it was Ruthie, but it was Ruthie like the bride, and I was supposed to be Jenny the priest. And oh my goodness, what a joy. What a joy.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was great. Best wedding ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your wedding's going to be rubbish compared to mine, Jenny.
You can heckle me from the back.
It's not. It's going to be wonderful.
Jim and Frank then turn up at the door.
Oh, they do.
Geraldine's still in her crisis. She says to them, "Oh, you're never going to believe what's happened. This is ridiculous." But Frank and Jim, like Alice, are excited
Yeah.
for Geraldine in her singleness.
Congratulations, Becca.
Off the shelf at last.
Oh dear, this is not great. It's not great.
But it is a rhetoric that happens a lot with female clergy, or just females who are
Females
Christians.
in general. Yeah.
You know, oh, someone showed interest in with them, and you're like, yeah, but they're creepy. I don't like them. Oh well, you know, it's a person. Just go for it, and it's wrong.
Indeed. Well, the wrong thing is the lack of love. Because I do feel a bit sorry for Owen in this, when she's like, Owen had more hands up sheep spotting yous knew it than James Herriot knew it, versus me, you know, amazing, magical, glorious, respectable me. And I'm like, oh, Joey, love Owen. He's a beautiful creature of God as well. But the thing that's missing is the love.
Yeah.
No one should marry somebody that they don't love, unless it's an arranged marriage, and that's an important thing for you.
Yeah, I think it stems from. So I mean, we've probably all experienced in different ways. Parishioners being concerned for our singleness when you two are single, and for me, you know, very interested in wanting to know when I'm going to have someone, and when I'll find the right man, and you know, very almost got set up with someone's son once. What it stems from, I think, is their adoration of you, and I think they see the inherent loneliness of the vicarage, and of the role, and they want you to have someone to support you.
Which totally makes sense, because it's actually really, really hard.
Yeah,
its ministry is so hard, and I imagine it's just as hard, obviously balancing family stuff as well, Ruthie, and obviously you've got tiny human to look after, and someone to report back to and to take care of as well. But actually, I have to say, like, I know obviously I've been with my partner for 5 years now, but obviously he doesn't live at the vicarage, and although, like, obviously I know that support is there, it is so hard. And there's nobody there to hold you accountable. There's no one there to talk to when you get in through the door. There's no one there to, I don't know, just to help you navigate things better.
As lovely as Henry is, he can't offer all those things.
No, indeed.
Despite his enthusiastic welcome when you come to the door.
Which does change my life, yeah.
Which, Kate, you're going to get soon, and I'm so excited.
I know.
You'll have the woo-woo-woo-woos when you get to the door.
I know. Oh, if I haven't brought her out with me.
Yes. And this scene as well is, going back to our very previous conversation, is the B plot. This scene is the one where the advert saves the whole thing.
Yes, yeah.
Because the advert that Jim and Frank have brought along with them is one for bell ringing, and it reads this: "Want to have a go at bell ringing? Then come along to St Barnabas and let us show you the ropes."
Which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And
as they leave, he says the line again because he's found it so funny. And show you the ropes.
Like Jim, oh, just perfect Jim moment. I mean, I made a note that I really loved this, and it works so well. The actual turn of phrase takes its origins from sailing, and learning how to sail. Show you the ropes. So it works really well for bell ringing as well. It works on multiple levels.
Chef's kiss. Beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, Geraldine is preoccupied.
Yes. From the hilariousness of the joke. Because now she realises she needs to work out how to turn down Owen. And Alice gives her some useful advice that whenever her mum has a difficult decision, she has a little drink to help her decide on the lottery numbers. And maybe a little touch of the drink might help Geraldine.
Yes.
And Geraldine is initially very resistant. And then you have the scene, lots of physical comedy, where she's sat with the bottle in front of her.
Geraldine is initially resistant, and she says that being a priest equips you for this complex human dilemma. It doesn't, as we then see.
It does in some ways, but this is quite a niche one for you to...
This is a niche one.
You have to draw lots of things. Yeah. And so, yes, the camera is focused on Geraldine, who has the bottle in front of her, and she's rocking back and forth, trying to ignore it, and then she eventually reaches for the bottle and the glass, and then forgets the glass and just downs part of the bottle in order to think clearer. And
you know what? This is actually the key part of the solution.
Yes.
This is later revealed. So Owen does then return. Before we delve into the awkward moment here, I just want to say something about Owen's fashion. I've made notes throughout this episode about Owen's outfits, because when he first appears, like when Geraldine is getting the her shopping out the car, I actually thought, you know what, he looks fairly well presented for Owen. He looked fairly clean. He looked, by our standards of 2022, quite stylish with the way his coat was falling.
Yeah.
I did note that his belt, for some reason, wasn't going through his belt loops.
Yeah, I
which
noticed
was really
that
weird.
Too. Yeah.
And then, like, he is quite still smart, and when he proposes, and quite clean. But then in this scene, I've written, Owen's come in looking like Toad of Toad Hall.
He's got the slick back hair, hasn't he? And he's got a big flower
and his mustard waistcoat, or something like that.
It's
anyway,
powerful.
Fantastical fashion from Owen.
So Geraldine, prior to Owen appearing, has been practicing ways to turn him down. And she starts each sentence with, Owen, I would love to marry you, but... Which is a really bad way to start the sentence, as we see, because she eventually says this to Owen when he appears, and he lunges in for another kiss before the but. Oh, it's just a nightmare. But then she says, I can't marry you because I don't love you.
Which are the right words.
Yeah.
I don't love you.
It's a hard truth, but needs to be said.
And we worry for Owen at this point because Frank and Jim have previously revealed lots of family trauma that has happened to do with marriages and relationships, and there's a history in Owen's family of people going and committing suicide after marriages have gone wrong, and that's one of Geraldine's big worries, that Owen's going to do something to himself after this, fortunately for Geraldine and for us as the audience, he's not put off. He's not going to do something severe to himself, because it turns out that Geraldine has had a drink, a bit of Dutch courage before this, and Owen hates a woman who drinks, and so he now finds her disgusting and doesn't want to marry her. So problem
revolting
solved.
Old lush.
It's like he's been saved.
Yeah.
And he leaves, and Geraldine says, that's one hell of a charming dude. Which is a phrase I want to use more often now.
What a crazy day in Paris.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Big day.
Because he didn't give her much time as well, either, to come up with an answer. Very short time frame there.
Yeah.
So then, with that little plot tied up in a bow and resolved, we then return to Horton Manor, where we see Hugo and David standing off again with Geraldine accompanying them.
But this time he's come to a decision, hasn't he?
Yeah. So Geraldine is initially invited over by David in order to discuss this obsession with Alice, and David's response to it is to try and find other women to interest Hugo, because he is one of the most eligible bachelors in the country, and on his list of women he likes includes Geraldine herself and Anne Widdecombe, which is an odd choice, but there we go. And Geraldine has a talk to David and says, look, they adore each other. They're made for each other. They're Mr. and Mrs. Cactus. Let the succulents be together. And David's still not having it. And Hugo comes in at this point, and David says that he's going to cut Hugo out the will if he carries on with that Tinker Woman.
And he shows him it as well.
Yeah.
It's not just a potential, it's look at this, I've already done it.
Yeah. And Hugo delivers a stunning line when he's told he'll be cut off and all that kind of thing. And he said, and you'll have, David says to him, you'll have nothing. And Hugo says, on the contrary, sir, I will have everything in the world that I desire. And Jerry at this point fist pumps, and I think we all do with
we do.
Yes!
It's that Jane Austen
Yes.
moment of triumph.
Yeah.
Where we don't where Lizzie stands up to Lady Catherine.
Oh, yes.
And says, you know, I'm not, and says, but refuses to promise that she'll never marry
Mr. Darcy.
Um,
there's so many moments like that in Austen, and it's just those are the most glorious bits when people stand up.
Yeah, for the one they love. It's almost it's even beyond Austen, isn't it? It's like this is the story we all want to live in, where you know, find a true love for our hearts, and they won't let anything stop them. They'll like get in between the lover and the beloved.
It's beautiful.
It is powerful.
And after this beautiful moment, we then turn to the parish hall, and Alice is busy stacking chairs, which, if we're honest, as clergy, is quite a big part of our job, I find.
Big time.
Big time. Just organising rooms for meetings, and especially as a curate, your job is stacking chairs a lot of the time. I think Dave Walker did a cartoon about that. And Hugo appears through the door, and we have a beautiful proposal for Alice and Hugo, which is weird to the rest of us, and there's quite a lot of quotes from aliens, but it's just perfect for who they are.
It is. It's, I mean, just the beauty, just the innocence, and Alice being completely unawares as Hugo kneels down, and she's saying, why are you kneeling down? And Hugo says, because I need to be kneeling down. She says, well, maybe I'll join you on the floor.
What are you looking for? And he says, have you dropped something?
And he says, no, you need to be sitting.
So, do you know what? I love this because these days there's such a big emphasis on, how did he propose? Where did he take you? What did he buy you? What was the room looking like? Did you go on holiday? There can be but this is like just the purest way. Do you know what I mean? That life moment. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's no ring, there's no bells and whistles, no extravagance. It's just someone pledging their life to another.
Which is a very Austen way of doing it as well, isn't it? There's there's not a big proposal scene. Well, there are big proposal scenes, but they come from natural circumstances as opposed to, someone preparing things. So they'll be on a walk or something and the opportunity comes, or, apart from letter writing, which, Captain Wentworth, what a babe. Anyway.
They both have very Austen ways of talking to each other.
Yeah.
So you have Hugo, he asks her to consent to be his wife, doesn't he? And then Alice replies, never have I, or never is there a question, or she actually forms a sentence which, to be honest, feels a little bit un-Alice-like, I've got to say.
Sorry.
She says no, and then he's like, what? She says, no, let me finish. No question I've ever been asked has been easier to answer.
Yes.
Apart from when my mum asked me which one of the Teletubbies I'm most like.
Winky hands down every time.
Oh no, it's Poe. Poe's my favourite. Anyway.
I have to say, I'm Poe lover as well.
And then, she says yes, and he says yes, and then says, crackerjack.
Yes. And then Geraldine comes in, having preempted this. So obviously, perhaps Hugo has said he's going to propose, and we have what I feel is a mediocre punchline for the B plot of a newsletter. She reveals the headline, Verger to wed Hugo Horton. Alice misreads it as, firstly, it's Verger told Hugo Horton, and then forgets that she is a virgin because she gets upset because she thinks Hugo is going to marry someone else. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just felt like this was a very odd way to end the episode. It just didn't feel like it quite had the punch that it could have had. It's funny, but just not, I don't know, it just didn't hit, just didn't ring my bell.
I like that it is the main headline. Maybe they could have done it slightly different, but I feel that's perfect, having had all the advertisements and all the different things that have happened later on in the episode. But again, it's a very Austen thing of another juicy misunderstanding, which is how lots of the romances go forward, is through misunderstandings. And the misunderstanding here being that Alice forgets that she's the verger. And yeah, I love that Geraldine just at the end turns to Hugo and says, good luck.
Yeah. And it might be a timing thing. I think potentially this could have just been, the same punchline could have just been played out a bit more. Like maybe this goes to print and everyone's reading it and everyone's really happy, but then Alice is sad.
Yeah.
And then we still have that punchline. There's just a little bit more, something is made more of it, and we see David reading it. I don't know. I just felt like there was something more that there could have been there.
Oh, yeah. And so the romantic episode, well, the first of quite a few romantic episodes comes to the end, and we have Alice and Hugo finally engaged, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you first watch this, having watched season 1, and you've seen Alice and Hugo dancing around each other, and I think as an audience we can see that they are just perfect for each other. They're obviously in love. To finally see the resolution there, and to see them joining together, and finally expressing their love for each other and understanding each other in expressing that, like having gone from Hugo trying to give up his naughty thoughts and Alice playing with snacks and not helping him, from that point, and Alice just being so oblivious to them actually stepping beyond their self-consciousness, stepping out of their safety zone and taking the risk to say, I love you, I want to be with you. It's beautiful.
It is. And we have the promise of a wedding.
We have the promise of a wedding.
Oh, I thought you were going to launch into Here Comes the Bride.
Da, 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 da. Yes. But I think then what we've had as a first episode of the season, it has really set the tone for a lot of the episodes we're going to now have, which are exploring relationship, not just working towards Alice and Hugo's wedding, but as Geraldine reflects more and more on being single and wanting to find love, which ultimately leads us down the road to
Richard Armitage,
to Harry, and like what is the official last episode, but obviously then we do have little mini episodes afterwards.
Yeah. Exciting. Wonderful.
Reloads.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Vicar's Watch Dimly. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
I saw
who?
I saw do love you a lot.
Oh, Jenny, that's awful. How did you have the creepy voice?
It's when I keep romancing you, boy. Engagement, love.
Oh my goodness.
I sure do love you a lot.